You have an extra $200 this month. You have debt? You also know you should probably be investing. Every finance creator online has an opinion. Every spreadsheet has an answer. Pay off the debt. No. Invest. No. It depends on the interest rate. No. It depends on your risk tolerance. By the time you've watched 5 videos on this, you know less than when you started. But here's what almost nobody says out loud. The question isn't really debt or invest. The real question is, which decision will you actually stick with for the next 2 years? Because the math only matters if you follow it. And most people don't follow the math. They follow the feeling. This video isn't going to tell you which one is correct. It's going to show you why your brain already has an answer, and why that answer might be smarter than the spreadsheet gives it credit for. Here's why paying off debt first feels right, even when the interest rate is low. Every payment is a visible win. The balance goes down. You can watch it happen in real time, every single statement. That's not nothing. That's your brain getting a reward signal on a predictable schedule. This is the entire logic behind the debt snowball method. Pay off your smallest debt first, regardless of interest rate, then roll that payment into the next one. Behavioral researchers have actually studied this, and the finding is consistent. People who use the snowball method are more likely to eliminate all their debt eventually, not because the math is better, but because the early wins keep them going. Compare that to the avalanche method, paying off the highest interest debt first, which is mathematically optimal. It often takes longer to feel anything. The big high-interest debt might be your largest balance, so it shrinks slowly. Months of payments, barely any visible movement. For a lot of people, that's where motivation quietly dies. A 4% interest rate is just a number on a page. A debt that's gone, completely, permanently gone, is relief you can feel in your chest. And that feeling isn't irrational. It's data. It's telling you something about what keeps you consistent. Now here's the case the spreadsheet makes, and it's a strong one. If your debt sits at 4% interest, and the market has historically returned more than that over long periods, then every dollar you put toward that debt instead of investing is a dollar that doesn't get those extra years of compounding. And compounding doesn't care about your feelings. It rewards time in the market more than almost anything else. This is why, mathematically, low interest debt, student loans, some mortgages, certain car loans, often shouldn't automatically be your top priority. The math can favor making minimum payments and putting extra money elsewhere. On paper, this is the smart choice. It's also the choice that often feels like nothing happened. You're still in debt. The number that bothers you every time you check your account balance? It's still sitting there, basically untouched. You made the mathematically optimal decision, and emotionally, it can feel like you made no decision at all. This is the gap. Not a gap in knowledge, a gap between what's optimal and what's sustainable. Let's make this concrete, purely as an illustration of the psychology, not a recommendation. Picture 2 people, same situation. Both have $5,000 in debt at 4% interest. Both have an extra $200 a month. Both know about compound interest. Both have read the same articles. Person A puts the $200 toward the debt every month. After about 2 years, the debt is gone. They feel lighter. They start investing the full $200, now with no debt hanging over them, and they stay consistent because the win they just had reinforced the habit. Person B invests the $200 from day one. Mathematically, over time, this can work out favorably. But here's what often happens in practice. Seeing the debt sit there, untouched for 2 years, creates a quiet, ongoing tension. For some people, that tension leads to inconsistency, skipping a month here, dipping into the investment there, just to make a dent in the debt. Same numbers, same starting point, potentially different outcomes. Not because one person did the math wrong, but because one plan matched how they actually function under the weight of watching a number not move. This is where most financial advice quietly fails people. It treats personal finance like a math problem, when for most people, it's an endurance problem. The optimal path only works if you stick to it for years, without wavering, regardless of how it feels along the way. But humans aren't spreadsheets. We're influenced by visible progress, by emotional relief, by the difference between a number going down versus a number that's technically growing somewhere you can't easily see. There's a concept in behavioral economics called present bias. We weight immediate, visible rewards more heavily than future, abstract ones. A debt payment is immediate and visible. Investment growth, especially early on, is slow and practically invisible. 2 years of compounding on $200 a month barely looks different from zero. 2 years of debt payments looks like an empty balance. So when someone picks pay off debt first, even when the math slightly favors investing, they're not necessarily making a mistake. They might be making a decision that correctly accounts for the fact that they're a person, not an algorithm. The irrational choice can sometimes be the more realistic one. There's one place where this whole psychological tug-of-war tends to disappear almost entirely. Very high-interest debt, like some credit cards. At that point, the gap between what feels right and what the math suggests tends to shrink for most people. The cost of carrying that debt becomes obvious enough that the emotional pull to pay it down and the mathematical case for paying it down often point in the same direction. It's really the lower interest debt, the kind where both paths are genuinely reasonable, where the tension we've been talking about actually shows up. That's the zone where psychology and math start pulling in different directions, and where understanding why you feel a certain way matters more than knowing the right answer. So, debt or invest? The honest answer is that the question itself is incomplete. It's missing the most important variable. You, not your interest rate, not the market average. You, and whether a plan is something you'll actually follow for the next several years without quietly giving up. The financial industry sells certainty, 5-step plans, optimal allocations, definitive answers. But certainty is easy to sell and hard to live inside of. The real skill isn't finding the mathematically perfect path. It's understanding yourself well enough to choose the path you won't abandon. That's not a compromise. That's the actual strategy. They just don't put it in the spreadsheet.